This is why you should always sleep with your lights on. In 1991, a man named Christopher Case was found dead in his bathtub, fully clothed in the fetal position. When police interviewed his best friend Sammy, she told them about a very disturbing phone call she got from him the night before he died. On the call, he told her that the previous night he had woken up to what sounded like whispering coming from underneath his bed. When he went to look, he couldn't move. As he laid helplessly, he watched a black figure pull itself out from underneath his bed. Once it was fully upright, it reached down and began choking him until he passed out. The next morning when he came to, he felt his neck and it was swollen and bruised. And then he saw blood on his hands and he saw that there were deep, uniform incisions on each of his fingertips. As he's saying all this to Sammy and telling her how scared he is to go to bed that night, he suddenly stops and he says, "I hear whispering outside my room." Then the phone went dead. If someone offers you this, walk away. In 2016, a man was staying at his friend's cabin in the woods when he decided to go for an evening stroll. A little ways down the trail, he hears someone call out from behind his neighbor's house. He looks up and he sees this skinny guy pop out from behind the building who starts waving frantically at him to come over. Worried this guy could be in trouble, the man takes off running to assist. But when he gets close enough, the neighbor just offers him a fistful of Slim Jims and starts talking about how much he hates his wife. Sensing there was something wrong with this guy, he says no thank you to the Slim Jims and walks away. The next day, the man calls his friend who owned the cabin to ask him what the deal was with his weirdo neighbor. There was silence on the phone, and then his friend just says, "I don't have any neighbors." The police are called, and it turns out his neighbor was really some lunatic who had recently killed his wife and had been hiding out in the abandoned cabin next door.
Here's why you should never record yourself sleeping. So there was a woman who was a chronic sleep talker. One day at work, she was talking to her coworkers about dreams. A couple of the coworkers were telling their scariest dreams, and the woman replied, "I don't really dream, I'm just a sleep talker." So the other coworkers insisted that she record herself sleeping to see maybe if she says something during the night. So she downloads a voice recording app and puts it on her nightstand before she goes to sleep. For the next 2 months, she recorded some really cool stuff up until one night. As she was listening to herself sleep, she heard in the background the door slam. She had no idea why the door would slam because she lives alone. So she listened to the recording of the door slamming and she just went right back to sleep. And while she was sleeping, she woke up to another door being slammed. So she freaked out to go see which door opened because she maybe thought there was an intruder. But to her surprise, she found there was nobody else in the house. So since she's already freaking out, she went back to sleep to try and get some rest. And like every other single morning, she wakes up to listen to herself sleep. She's listening to the recording and she hears a man say, "Nice try," in a very faint voice. Like and follow for part 2.
This is why you should always keep your head on a swivel. In 2017, an elderly woman who lived alone thought she saw something moving in her backyard and went to the window to have a look. As she's looking around, a shadowy figure emerges right on the other side of the glass, standing in her backyard. Terrified, she keeps an eye on the figure while calling police, but by the time she hangs up, the figure's gone. When the police arrive, her front door is unlocked, so they go inside and they find her still sitting in front of the window looking for this figure. The police search the backyard, but they don't find anything. When the police go back inside to search the house, they quickly find some large footprints that couldn't have been hers in the room that she was sitting in and all around the first floor. That's when they realized what was going on. She wasn't seeing a shadowy figure in her backyard. She was seeing the reflection of someone in the room with her. If you make it to the end, I'm sorry. In 2007, a woman was lying awake in her hotel bed when she started hearing a kid run up and down the hall laughing and making tons of noise. She considered going out and telling the kid to be quiet, but eventually just said whatever and fell asleep. The next morning, she got up and asked her teenage daughter who was staying in the room next door if she had heard the kid, and she said yes, it was so annoying. That night, the woman is back in bed trying to sleep when once again she hears the kid in the hall. Now feeling pretty annoyed herself, she starts walking to the front door to get a better listen when the footsteps stop right in front of her door and she hears the kid playing with the do not disturb sign. She leans into the peephole to get a better look, but the kid's gone. So she steps into the hallway and looks down the hall, and there's the kid at the far end, just standing there perfectly still. This is what they meant when they said, "Don't talk to strangers." In the early 1900s, a 10-year-old boy was playing in the woods when a tall man appeared and asked if he wanted to come back to his cabin for dinner. Totally caught off guard, the boy reluctantly agrees and begins walking. When they get to the cabin, the boy is relieved when he sees Paul, a family friend, sitting on the porch, so the boy happily goes inside. After they eat, the boy says thank you to the strange tall man, says bye to Paul, and then he leaves. He had only walked a few steps when he sees his family, along with Paul, running up the path towards him, frantically asking if he was okay. Confused, the boy says, I'm just fine, and he looks at Paul and he's like, why didn't you tell them I was with you at the cabin? And he points over his shoulder. Paul glances over the boy's shoulder and then narrows his eyes and says, you were kidnapped by a cult 3 days ago. No one's seen you. Terrified, the boy turns around to look at the cabin he just came from, and it's gone. All he sees is a dark forest that stretches for miles. This story has the best ending ever. In 2003, a 9-year-old was home alone playing video games when he thinks he hears his cat meowing on the back patio, so he goes downstairs to let him in. He sees a deranged-looking man standing on his back patio howling at the sky, who then quickly looks at the boy. He grabs a fistful of cigarette butts from the ashtray, stuffs them in his mouth before he starts howling at the sky some more. After the police take the man away, they come back to talk to the boy and his family. Turns out the man had severe autism and lived in that boy's house up until his mother passed away, at which time he was transitioned to a mental institution. He broke out of that mental institution to go looking for his mom, which is how he came back to the boy's house. 15 years later, that same boy is sitting on his same back patio when he starts to hear that same meowing sound, and he looks up and it's the same autistic man walking towards his house. Knowing the man's story, he invites him into his house. The man's face lights up, he runs inside and starts crying. He was finally home. The men become friends, and every week Tom goes home to visit. Everybody thinks this video is fake until they see what's in the vent. In 2018, a group of urban explorers decided to check out this abandoned factory. As soon as they go inside, they see this warning on the wall. They go upstairs anyways and immediately hear voices from the floor above them. Instead of running away like normal people, they go up to have a look. They trace the voices back to this vent, so they think, and they take their camera and they slide it in to have a look. When they review the footage, they can't believe what they found.